JavaScript closures are effectively a way for scoped variables to stick around when the outer function has finished executing for inner functions. What does that mean? Let's have a look at a quick example. Here we have a function called sayGreeting. It takes in one argument, name. It then immediately returns another function that is, all it does is console.log hello, the name that was passed in originally. So this is effectively a function factory, which down here we can have a look and see. Let's use it greet foo. We call sayGreeting, we give it the argument foo, greet bar, call sayGreeting with the argument bar. We now, both of these, if you understand that typing, it both says these are both now functions. If we call them, we get the output hello foo, and we call the other one, we get hello bar. Now, as you can see, greet foo still has a reference to, or the value of foo inside it when we call the resulting function. This is all perhaps seems a little abstract. So let's jump again into how this could be used for private variables in objects. So let's assume a slightly more realistic example is we want to create an object. We want to create a person. So we have a function, create person. It takes in the name and age of that person, and then returns an object, a person object, that has only two functions on it. We have a way to change the age and a way to get an info string about that person. If we look at const foo equals create person, we give the name foo and an initial age of 5, and bar with the name bar and initial age of 10. If we go ahead and call console.log of foo.info and bar.info, we get the output foo is 5 years old, bar is 10 years old. Both of that information must still be available to the foo and bar objects, even though they are just objects, and those variable values are only stored back up here in the arguments from the original function call. Down here, we can call foo.setAge 14, which back up here, all it does is take in a new age and change the age, the original age argument, to some new value. If we then call foo.info and bar.info again and log the two of them, we get that 14 and 10 is still there. In a nutshell, closures are a way for scoped variables when you have inner functions to still exist even when the outer function has finished. Let's have a quick look at an example of what looks like a closure but isn't a closure. Here we have a simple example of, we have an array of names that we are looping over, creating a button for each of those names that when clicked on will append some text to some part of the document and say you've clicked on name, and each button has a text name. You would expect that when you click on the Melbourne button or the Brisbane button, that it will say clicked on Melbourne and Brisbane. But that's not what happens. Let's have a quick look over here. There's a little bit more to the example. It says clicked on Sydney each time. That's because this block scope here isn't a closure. It's just a block scope. The value of the variable will change outside as we're looping around. That's also partially to do with the fact that the name variable lives outside this scope of this block scope. It lives in the same scope as the for loop, which means that as it loops through, the name variable will continue to exist down here and can be updated. And then if we change the name variable down here to name equals Perth, saying clicked, if you click on the button, it'll then say clicked on Perth, which isn't even in the array. The one simple way around this is to change var to let. Then the variable is actually scoped to this block. Each time this function is made, it gets bound to that name that was in that scope. But in this case, it's not actually a closure. It just kind of looks like a closure and can trip people up. I feel like it's an important thing for people to make note of. Anyway, things that aren't closures but look like closures.